welcome to season number 5. It's season number 5 already of the webinar. It means we're in our
Wow.
5th year. And of course, it's called Global Radio Ideas. My name is Ken Benson from the P1 Media Group. And of course, my co-host all the way from Germany is the Benztown CEO and Big Cheese, Andy Sanneman. Hi, Andy.
Hey, Ken. Hey, Paul. How are you guys?
Good morning.
And
evening for you.
Yeah, and most of all, thanks to everybody viewing today. Thanks for watching. Interesting conversation today. Lots to talk about. Talent, lots of talent elimination over the years. Now AI plays in. So we're going to talk to a guy that knows something about talent. And today's webinar is called How Radio Talent Can Survive and Thrive in 2024. Our chat box is open. So if you have a question or a comment and you'd like to ask something directly of our guest later in the show, you can do that. And let's tell you about who he is and what he's doing here today. He's a lawyer. And before he got into media and tech, he worked with Amazon. He also prosecuted white-collar crime, which could be a whole nother series for another day. But today, I look at him as the Jerry Maguire of the American radio industry. He's kind of a super agent. And he's personally negotiated over $1 billion in talent deals, which is quite substantial. Crazy number, right? He's the exec producer of podcasts as well that have also resulted in over 1 billion downloads. That's your lucky number, Paul, and it's a good one. Today, he represents some of the biggest names in U.S. radio, including sports icon Dan Patrick, Bobby Bones, B.J. Shea, Ricky Smiley, John Jay and Rich Jubal from the not the Brooke and Jubal show anymore.
Well, I used to represent Bobby Bones, but I represent Brooke and Jeffrey. But it's not that. Yeah, Brooke and Jeffrey, but used to represent Jubal, but then the show split. So just to be clear.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. Today he works for Workhouse Media. It's a leading audio-first multi-platform talent plus content management and production company, with clients and partnerships working across local radio, syndicated radio, podcasting, television, and digital, and has a whole bunch of side businesses in addition to that, which again, another conversation. For today, welcome our guest live from Seattle, the principal and CEO of Media Workhouse, Mr. Paul Anderson.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me to be your guest.
Paul, so awesome to hear you. Thanks for being here. Before we jump in, I'd really like to introduce you to our guests a little bit better. So is there anything worth sharing that people might not know about you?
Well, I think you just gave it away. I'm on the picture. I'm a lifelong cyclist, which to me is sort of my church. I love to cycle, and I cycle outdoors in dangerous urban conditions and haven't been killed yet.
And I noticed your jersey here has the Workhouse Media logo on it, which is kind of cool. Is there a team involved with that, a racing team, or you just had the jersey made because it's your company?
Yeah, I just a bunch of my talent who are cyclists wear the Workhouse jersey, the kit. It's awesome. A whole kit. But no, there's no team. I actually prefer to cycle by myself.
Yeah, and I'm a cyclist as well, so we're gonna have to connect at some point. And we even live in the same state, so it may make it easy. All right, so let's get started. Let's talk about radio today. 2023 was another challenging year, right? Revenue was down for radio. More jobs were lost. And then, of course, radio started experimenting with AI, which has created a lot of panic and concern. As you know best, you represent lots of talent. You're hearing what their concerns are, the anxiety they're having over what's going on. But Paul, I believe because the situation you're in, you represent talent. So you're talking with lots of talent all over the country. You're also negotiating deals with owners and managers and companies, big and small, all over the country. So, what's going on and what do you foresee in 2024?
So with respect to AI or just generally?
Just general in radio. What looking in the crystal ball, where are we going to end up this year compared to last year?
Well, I think that one of the things I've really tried to instill in our talent partners is that if you own a hill, if you're number one in the ratings, you're top three in the ratings, you're responsible for a significant portion of revenue with your broadcast partner, either locally or nationally, you're probably in pretty good shape. I think that a lot of our I joke that it's the have-yachts and the have-nots. You either own your mountain and you're defending your mountain. And of course, when you're at the top of the heap, everyone's trying to gun for you. But if you're doing well in the ratings, you're doing well in terms of being a great revenue partner with your broadcast partner, then you're probably going to do really well. In fact, I think you're going to end up getting a higher portion or higher percentage of the revenue of the overall operations of your station or your syndication group than used to be the case, because the broadcasters really can't live without you, right? The most important thing in the entertainment business is content, and the radio business is an entertainment business. And unless you have a connected tissue to the audience, you're kind of screwed. And it's really the talent who make the difference, right? Because you can listen to any of the music. If you're on a music station, you can listen to any of the music without commercials on Spotify, on Amazon Music, Apple, Pandora. So what makes the difference? What makes the difference is that relationship that the talent have with the audience. And without that relationship, the advertisers are not being activated in their services and goods by listeners, and people, frankly, don't give a shit about on a music only experience. They want that. They want their friends, and their friends are the talent who we represent and who have that relationship with the audience. So, despite what some broadcast look, it's a crazy symbiotic relationship between the talent and the broadcast partners. I've said this in other forums. When I got in this business, it used to be that the sticks were up here, right? We call it the brand, nothing bigger than the brand. But things have changed, right? Over the years, and when I first got into this business more than 2 decades ago and came from a high tech and media background, I said to some of my talent, like, over time, the internet is really going to change things. And it was really hard for a lot of people to see because they grew up from teenagers or early 20s getting into the broadcast business, and the verticals of distribution were really limited to the stations and the markets. And so if you weren't on one of those stations, you didn't have an audience. But things have evolved, and so you have the opportunity to actually entertain people across multiple platforms these days that didn't exist. And so now the companies, I think, are really understanding that the relationship that the talent has with the audience is really the most important thing. The brand is important, but the talent, it used to be the stick was here and the talent was down here because there was no other place to go. And over time, it kind of went to here. And now the talent are here and the sticks are here, but you still need that partnership with your broadcast partner because they have all of the other mechanisms, including hopefully great sales departments. And I've certainly get lots of complaints that maybe the sales departments aren't as good as they should be. But I think that's a common complaint. I think they're all working hard to try to create revenue, because without that, the door is for everyone.
Yeah, it's a difficult time for sure for sales department as well. So, Paul, I 100% agree. I mean, we've seen that, for example, 10 years ago with Kyle and Jackie O making the jump from what used to be SEA to like KISS, and we saw like the listenership in Sydney like going bananas and changing station, which would have not been possible like years before when the brand stick like was like so much higher. Totally agree. So, what advice do you offer your clients in these challenging times? Like any specifics, like in other words, what skills do they need like to survive and thrive today?
I think that the biggest thing that talent can do is lean into their own confidence that what they do actually is extremely material and is necessary for the business. I think sometimes talent go into conversations with their broadcast partners at whatever level, and they are going at it as the employee rather than as the enterpriser. And I think you can be a great employee, but you also have to be a great enterprise thinker. And so my advice is own your own asset class. I've said this in other forums. You got to think of your career as its own asset class, no different than your 401k plan, no different than real estate, no different than other things you have. And so you always are kind of rebalancing your portfolio of assets. Like, what am I bringing to the table? And as a talent, it's an asset class. What talent bring to the table is incredible, right? It's not only entertainment, but it's a vulnerability as a human being that allows people to connect with them, and they put themselves out there in a way that, frankly, is awe-inspiring for me. Because while I guess I'm your talent for the purpose of this webinar, I'm not a talent, and I don't know how to go in and hold a room. Our talent partners do, and that is an asset. And so rather than think about, oh, what am I going to do? What am I going to do every day as the employee? Of course, you can be a great employee. At the same time, you have to be a great enterprise thinker. And so best advice is own your own success. Be entrepreneurial. Be vocal about the content that you're putting out. And if you get advice from a program director or a manager that is completely against your gut, stand up for yourself. Stand up for what you know is can actually connect. And you can do that in a way that's hyper collaborative. You don't have to be combative. You can be collaborative. And so own your success, own your asset category, and really lean into where this world, by the way, it's not where the world's going. It's where the world is right now. Right now, it's about the distinction and the point of differentiation right now is in radio is talent, and those relationships. Because like I said before, you can get the music anywhere. And frankly, it's a better experience if you only want to listen to music, then why would you listen to the radio if that's all you want? You go to the radio because you want all that connection to your community. You want the stories. You want the emotive experience with the morning show or the afternoon talent or the midday talent, whoever. You want to feel like you're part of your community, and you want to be entertained, and you want to be consoled when things are not good, because we all know that disasters happen, events happen in our nation's history, in our world's history, where our talent really provide a crutch and a shoulder to lean on for people in trying times, and that relationship matters. And by the way, people who activate talent activate consumer engagement 5 times greater than television. So think about that. You know, you're talking about the hundreds of millions of people who still listen to the radio every week, and maybe it's only for 15 minutes they do, but they actually listen to the talent. Like, oh, I endorse this product. They actually go, wow. If Stacy Lynn, who I know is on here, endorses a product, then they're go, well, I know she is a truth teller, so I'm gonna try that product because Stacy Lynn says that it's a product worth trying. That matters. And so you also have to be super conscientious about how you're lending your name to products. So be entrepreneurial and own your asset category.
So Paul, that's some great advice for the talent. But let's flip this around, because you talk to both sides. You deal with talent, but you're also dealing with the people that hire talent, right? The managers and the companies and the executives. What are they looking for today? What positions do they value? Because I'm sure we have people on here that want to grow in their careers. We have people that are looking for a shot or maybe out of work at the moment. You know, what would help them get back in the game and be attractive to the people that hire radio talent?
Well, the first thing you got to think about, other than like everyone who's probably in this webinar has a great native talent, and it's a great talent already. They have a baseline of skills because they've gotten this far in broadcasting. But we don't live in a one-dimensional vertical anymore in media. We have to serve multi-dimensions in media. And I think it's really important that you think about what unique things you bring to the table. Like when you're on Instagram, when you're on TikTok, Facebook, whatever you're doing, I think it's really important to go, wait, what's my brand? Who am I? Like, why does anyone care about what I have to say? And just talking about maybe a bit you're doing on the radio is not enough. I think you got to be thinking about those textural dimensions of yourself that you can share with an audience, and you have to lean into all of the ways you can engage an audience today that transcends radio. And so if you're talking to a broadcaster or partner, what makes you different is like, hey, here's what I'm doing. Here's how I've reinvented myself. Here's how I'm engaged with an audience that transcends the typical vertical transmission of a radio station. And I know a lot of talent are really doing a phenomenal job. I work with a talent named Brew on the radio, who's got, I don't know, like I think about 7 million followers across platforms. But I'll tell you that Brew doesn't go on and try to be a TikTok guy. He goes on and he really uses radio bits in his own style, and he has engaged an audience. And he's, by the way, he's done it in a very short period of time. He started in COVID when he was bored in Detroit, and now he has a syndicated show out of Los Angeles, and he's doing all sorts of things across media, and he owns those things. He doesn't. His company Odyssey does not own his persona. He is in charge of his own revenue on his social media platforms, and he's able to experiment, and obviously does it very consistent with his brand. But he doesn't go on and he's not trying to be somebody he's not. If you look at the stuff, if you look at his content, it's radio content. It's just done with a spin that's relevant to those platforms and the demographics they serve. And I think that all of the talent on this webinar have something very unique to offer. And it doesn't matter how old you are. You don't have to be the young person with six-pack abs. You can be you can be any age and bring your own personal brand to these platforms and engage. So if I'm a talent trying to get a job, if I don't have one, then I'm really emphasizing how I can serve my audience across multiple platforms.
So jump in here really quick before we go. So you think it would be better to already have a followership, like listenership, even if you're not on radio actually, like at the moment, it'd be good to build this up on social media and then maybe jump back on the radio train? Is that like you want to be precise?
Yeah, I think you can do it simultaneously. I think that you can be thinking about how you're going to present yourself through multiple platforms, which is really just all entertainment, right? Facebook Shorts is probably the most engaged part of Facebook now. TikTok certainly has really emphasized people's ADD, short attention spans.
It's a disaster.
Which might not be good if we have kids, but can be great. It can be great if you're trying to entertain people. So I don't think you have to have all of it figured out. You don't have to build up an audience of millions of people in order to be relevant to a broadcast partner. But I think you need to be thinking in that direction, and you need to show them that you are thinking about multiple platforms and not just the one.
Okay, perfect. So obviously, I mean, part of that discussion, everybody knows is going to be AI, like the word that every company uses right now when sell something. So AI is here, and I mean, it's already impacting. It's not going, it's already impacting every industry. So we see many stations, companies experimenting with AI. We do it ourselves as well. So preparing for today's webinar, I found this quote, and never trust like what you read on the internet, like where you said literally like, I'm not worried about AI. So why shouldn't radio talent, if this quote is accurate, of course, why shouldn't radio talent be worried?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's more context for it. I mean, there are some things that we ought to worry about. Like, for example, last week, one of my big national talents' voice showed up in a television commercial in Savannah, Georgia, for a sole practitioner lawyer, and it's a very famous voice. And I'm like, what the hell? So we had to shut that down.
Yeah.
So and we're in the infancy of AI.
Absolutely.
And it is probably, next to the internet, the most disruptive technology that we're going to face over the next decade. And what we're seeing now is clunky compared to what it's going to be.
Yeah.
We're truly going to be able to have conversations with AI in real time that sound very human, but why at the end of the day do talent, I don't think, need to be paranoid about AI with respect to radio. I think AI can be useful in radio. There's a lot of things it can help, but here's one thing it can never be a substitute for, in my opinion. If the radio business understands all the way to the corner office of every major broadcast company in this country, that and across the globe, that our superpower is our human connection with the audience. And you cannot create a brand and a trust relationship with an audience by trying to fool them into thinking that a voice is actually an emotive human voice. Because after that, what else is left? If you do that, then what's the point? Just roll it up, roll over, and everyone should just subscribe to Spotify, and it's over. And there's no substitute for actual humans who are in an audience with real emotions and can respond in real time with how humans actually think and how they feel. And there's no substitute for actual humans doing that. You can do liners, there's a lot of things that can help. You can do, if you're on a nationally syndicated show, you can use AI to record the call letters for those new affiliates and maybe provide some liner content for those affiliates. But Ricky Smiley, my client, or Brooke and Jeffrey, or Stacy Lynn, like these, there's no substitute for being able to act like a human, because we are human, and AI is not going to replace that, because it is our superpower as a business, and without it, we're screwed.
Yeah, Paul, I completely agree with you. Although about a year ago, when Radio GPT was announced, we had Daniel Standig, the founder, talking about this, and he believes there's a day when an AI morning show will be as competitive as a human one. So that remains to be seen, but I'm in your camp.
I don't think so, and I don't think I'm delusional. There are some things in our human evolution that simply have not changed. I read a book recently, a #1 New York Times bestseller by Peter Attia. It's called Outlive, which is a great book if you haven't read it. And there's a chapter on sleep, and how important sleep is. And one of the things that he talked about in that chapter is, over millions of years, why, if we could evolve as humans and kind of eliminate sleep, then why hasn't evolution eliminated sleep? Because we need sleep. We need sleep. It repairs our brains at night. It repairs pathways. The rest allows us to regenerate. But guess what? There's a reason why we humans love interacting with other humans, because we need it. And there's nothing in our evolution that suggests that a computer can ever be a substitute for the true human connection that we all not desire, but we have to live.
Yeah, it's a biochemical thing as well. Like I heard like an interview with Naval Ravikant, like who's also a forethinker about the AI topic as well. He said like basically people are selling like specific AI product. It's called generative, but it's like very specific and like kind of dumb. So the like generic AI is what we would talk about, and that's like still like a long time away, because we can't rebuild basically the pathways of biochemical of human bodies and like the brains. It's a very interesting topic, but I'm also like in the same camp. Usually I should be another for making this more interesting, but I also hope and believe that we need the physical interaction. I also think, like coming back to the webinar with ChatGPT, I also think it's Daniel exactly. So I also think I mean obviously Daniel as a developer needs to be in the other camp, but for us,
I agree with that. There's another book that people should read by John Medina, who's a Seattle-based brain scientist. He wrote a best-selling book called Brain Rules, and New York Times bestseller, Brain Rules. He also wrote a book called Baby Brain Rules. I know John. John is a very zany scientist, and I've enjoyed a lot of conversations with John. But what he will tell you, one of the reasons why radio and podcasting activates consumers, in the case of podcasting, it's actually 10 times better than television. Radio 5 times better than television. The reason is brain science. It's how we come out of our mother's womb, and it's how we're in the womb. With that, all that vibration of sound allows us to come out into the world where then things clear up, and sound is very different when you're not immersed in a uterine sac. That vibration creates memories and fires and creates syntax in our brain that actually give us comfort that when we hit the cold world that is coming out of your mother's womb, we are comforted by our mother's voice, our father's voice, our siblings, a dog, whatever. And your memory for that is built in. And so you can't, people are, I've said this a million times, like in radio, you're not operating from a script, right? You're actually interacting as a human being with your audience. And people know when you're full of shit. And people know when you're not really being authentic. And it's very difficult to do a radio show for hours a day. You can't hide. You can pretend like you're somebody else. You can embellish, you can enhance, but ultimately the audience has a pretty good idea of who you are as a human being. I think that AI is useful for some things, but it's not going to be a substitute for the ears of people who are already hardwired and programmed from being in utero to understanding what that sound actually means for them in terms of soothing their life or exciting them, whatever it is. I think they will know the difference between AI and real people, and they will not like it. And when they find out they've been lied to, they will not like it. A brand is nothing more than a trust relationship. When you break that trust relationship, you're screwed.
Well, I'm sure a lot of the viewers right now are applauding you and hoping you're correct as we look in the crystal ball of what 2024 and beyond will bring. So we're chatting with Paul Anderson, the CEO of Workhouse Media. If you have a question for Paul, drop it in the chat box. We'll get to some questions shortly. I wanted to move on to another subject, Paul. I'm sure there's people watching today that are represented by you or somebody else, and people that have never been represented by an agent. So the question is, why should a talent hire somebody like you? And when's the best time to consider hiring an agent or getting some representation?
Well, I think that, I don't think you necessarily have to have an agent, but I think that the way you should think about an agent is as a media strategy and business partner in your career. And I've made all sorts of investments with talent early on in their careers because I made a bet that I'm picking a pony that I think is going to win the race. And so you invest time and you help develop that person and their career into hopefully what everyone's visualizing to be a great continued outcome. So you don't necessarily have to have an agent, but I think you should have, at the very least, a great media strategist in your corner, even if it's mentors and people you know along the way who you know only have your best interests in mind. If you're counting on a program director or a member of management who very likely loves you and thinks about you as a human being, if you're counting on them to be your strategy partner, then you've really committed to a fool's errand. Not because they aren't good people, but because their job is to work for the company. They don't work for you. And so you should be thinking about how it is that you put together your kitchen cabinet of advisors, whether it's a mentor, a parent, or agent, or a lawyer, or whoever, who's really smart and can challenge you. And I've said this in other interviews, the best tennis I play as a tennis player is when I'm playing tennis with someone who's a better tennis player than me. And so you should always challenge yourself to include in your life group people who are really smarter than you in some things and not as smart as you at others, so that you can create that symbiotic relationship. But I will say that, it's a pony business, right? You pick ponies. I pick ponies. I'm a pony to some talent. I've been super fortunate that the first when I got into this business, people know I started with Bob Rivers, and it was a funny story how I met him. Really, I bought his used Range Rover from him in the mid '90s, and it was as serendipitous as it was. And I ended up becoming his music lawyer when I was practicing law. And the very first shows that ever hired me and took a chance on me when I started this 23 plus years ago are still my clients today, every single one of them. And so they took a chance on me, and I invested my time in them, and hopefully they saw in me something that would kind of enhance and get them thinking about what they could do differently and what they could do to enhance their careers and hopefully be accretive to their own bottom lines. But you may not need an agent, but you definitely need people in your kitchen cabinet who are challenging you to think differently.
Okay, good advice. So let's move on, just because we want to get to some questions here. So let's talk about something we chatted about a couple of days ago, Paul, in preparation for today, is the creator economy, the influencer space that allows content creators like radio talent and to be social media influencers and earn revenue through their creations. We earned a little bit, or talked just a bit about this earlier, but how do radio talent get into this space? How do they participate in this space and make money? And I think one of the key distinctions you made earlier with the one talent is that they own that. They, get the revenue from those additional streams, not necessarily their employer.
Well, I think that first of all, you shouldn't accept as wholesale whatever the company gives you in terms of a contract, because the contract is going to try to 360 you into everything that you do. They own your.
Yeah.
And so I think that and to the credit of a lot of states across the country, at least in the United States, a lot of legislatures have actually moved to act to protect people's social media accounts from being taken over by their corporate partners across every industry. But the way to do it is to really upfront in your relationship with your employer, go, this is what I'm doing on my own. This is what I'm doing to create an audience. And no, you can't have that. But what I will do is give you some access to that audience. But here are the terms that we have to negotiate to give you access. And yeah, you can tell me not to talk about it on the air. Fair enough, because it's not reasonable for you to advertise everything you're doing on the air, and obviously plug all the rules aside. But you can make a stand that no, I'm creating a whole genre of TikTok videos that really build off of my brand. I'll give you access to that audience. I'll give you access to my Instagram audience, Facebook, whatever it is. But I think you have to be willing to come to the table to articulate what it is that you're actually doing, rather than going, well, I'm thinking about doing this. And they're like, well, you haven't really done anything yet, so what we're talking about something that doesn't even exist. I think you have to create it if that's something you're motivated to do.
Well, I think this is where an agent can certainly help in the negotiation.
Absolutely.
And guide a talent through this process so they don't get in that trap where they've given everything away. So that was
and
the
also
price
not
of
like to
admission
burn
alone.
bridges. Yeah, I also think it's also good to not burn bridges or get into a fight with your employer that you don't want to have. So I think it's a perfect situation for that. So, Paul, you recently wrote this very insightful piece on LinkedIn, how to be an exceptional negotiator. I think that ties in a little bit in the situation we described right now. So tell us a little bit more about this, how you came up with this. Is this some of the strategies you're using, or is that public advice that you want to share? How came that together?
Well, I encourage people to go read it if they want to. You can see, pretty easy to find me on LinkedIn. I was actually on an airplane. And I wrote that on an airplane.
It's good use of time.
Yeah, good use of time. But I think that there's a lot of misconception about what it is that goes into a great negotiation, and I think a lot of people think it should be. The measure should be the level of combat in a negotiation. And I think if you're in combat in a negotiation, I think you've already lost. And so obviously I kind of enumerate a lot of things in there, including empathy is really being, I think empathy is the first thing I talk about. If you can deliver to the other side the things that they want in a negotiation without giving up your own foundational needs, I think the goal is to create win-wins. I think that not being an asshole is important. Not being, I think being truthful is important. If you want to do business with the same people over and over again, I don't think it really creates any trust if what you're telling people is not true. You don't have to tell them everything, but what you do tell them needs to be truth. So what inspired me to write that? I guess I decided, and as I'm thinking about what I do and how impactful hopefully I've been with talent and other kinds of deals that I do, that why not pull back the onion a little bit and go, here's the way I think about these things. And it's not winner take all. It's hopefully win-win for everyone. And there's a lot of other things I say in that post. And if people want to go look at the post, I think it's worth looking at.
Yeah, I agree. It's short and sweet, but there's some really great bullet points in there that will help anybody in any negotiation, whether it's for your career or selling your house. So thank you for that, Paul. And I'm sure people are going to LinkedIn right now as they see that on the screen. We'll get to questions in 1 minute. And since we're running a little long, I just want to get maybe a 60 to 90 second overview of the big coup you pulled off in Seattle before Christmas, where Danny Bonaducci of Partridge Family fame, who did the morning show at KZOK in Seattle for many, many years, decided he was going to retire. You represent, as you told us the other day, many morning shows in Seattle. And you manipulated behind the scenes a trade where you took the morning show BJ Shea from KSW, and basically the one day was announced Danny is retiring, and basically within a couple of days was announced that BJ Shea and Sarah were going to be the replacement show. How did you make that happen, and how did you not piss everybody off? Or maybe you did.
I didn't piss anybody off. But, so look, I mean, manipulate sounds a little sinister. I think that the world's changed, right? KSW chose not to renew BJ. BJ's been number one in Seattle for the better part of 25 years, number one station in all of Seattle. I think obviously Odyssey is going into a new phase as they kind of restructure their company. And Danny, I've represented BJ for longer than I've actually been a full-time agent, because Bob Rivers made him the guinea pig before I did Bob's deal. And so I've represented BJ went back to when I was a practicing lawyer, so for almost 26 years. So I have a great relationship with BJ. And I've represented Danny for 23 years. In fact, I just had dinner last week with Danny and his wife Amy in Palm Springs. Danny came to me and said, "Hey, I think I'm ready to hang up my headphones and I'm going to retire." And I already knew that BJ was going to be off KSW's morning show. And so I asked Danny, I said, "Hey, would you wait could you do me a favor and could you wait?" And he's like, "Okay, Paul, whatever you say, boss." And I'm like, "Okay, well, I'm not the boss, you're the boss." But, and so I asked him to wait because I knew what the timing was going to be of BJ's announcement. And so obviously I worked behind the scenes with iHeart all the way to Bob Pittman. And we pulled together a deal in a short period of time when BJ decided he was definitely not going to be retired prematurely. He's got a lot to give. He's got a lot of energy, and he's got a love for this business. And so I pulled that deal off with iHeart. We kept it super secret. Really, nobody knew about it. Bob Pittman knew about it. A couple of senior executives at iHeart knew about it. Obviously, the local market president knew about it. But even the programming team, a lot of the programming team did not know about it until it was kind of as need to know basis. Then I called Jeremy Coleman at SiriusXM, who runs Howard's stations, and I asked him because I know Howard Stern's a big fan of Danny's, and I said, "Hey, would you please ask Howard if he would be willing to say some nice things as Danny announces his retirement?" And I trust Jeremy, so I called him the week before. Howard very enthusiastically jumped on because I know he's a huge fan of Danny's, and not only said great things about Danny, but also said great things about KZOK. And so then I asked SiriusXM if we could have permission to use all of that audio across KZOK to promote KZOK and BJ and Danny's retirement, and of course to tease what was coming. And they gave us permission, which was great. And then so I feel a little bit like an executive producer. I mean,
that sounds not far as sinister as Ken phrased it before.
It was,
like
but then I asked Danny. So I did not tell Danny who his replacement was going to be until his last show, until after the last show. And I know that iHeart, which has tremendous respect for talent, was a little worried about that. And I'm like, look, I've known Danny forever. I said I can't tell Danny because he'll forget. There's going to be TV cameras in the studio. And I called Danny right after his show ended. I said, hey, the reason I asked you to go in the studio on Saturday, the next day, was because BJ is going to replace you. And I would really like you, because I know that he and Danny and BJ have a tremendous respect for each other. And I said, would you go into the studio and just riff with BJ and see where it goes? And he said, absolutely, Paul. It'll be my honor to do that. And then I said, well, and by the way, Danny, I didn't tell you because I was worried that you were going to just accidentally tell somebody. And he's like, that was a good call, Paul, because I would have. So we joke about that to this day. And we're like, so how does it get pulled off? Relationships, right? I've known Bob Pittman forever, Brad Harden at iHeart, Mark Glenn, who runs the market in Seattle, is tremendous. Tony Coles, Tom McConnell, who's now overseeing it. All those people, And by the way, there's no hard feelings with Odyssey, even though they were maybe caught a little bit by surprise. There's no hard feelings because we're all trying to do right in our jobs, and we're all trying to do right by people. And there was no deception. It was just strategy and implementation.
Well done. Well done.
I know it's fun.
All right.
It was actually really, I got to say it was really fun because I really felt like I was executive producing. And I have such tremendous respect for executive producers who have to pull everything off behind the scenes and frontline producers. And so I felt like I was a producer as well as a deal guy.
Well, from the outside, it looked like a huge thing when it happened. I was like blown away how
it is
pulled off. So it's great to hear the story, and thank you for that.
That's what happened, and I have tremendous respect for the folks at Odyssey, and they obviously wanted to evolve the show, and that's their right. But it's also BJ's right to continue to do what he loves to do, which is the craft of communicating with people on the radio in Seattle. And that's what he's doing. He's having a blast. I also represented Sarah for about 15 years. Sarah is, of course, very sad that Danny decided to retire, but thrilled that she gets to work with BJ, and they already have a great relationship.
That's great. All right, we've got a few minutes left, so let's get to a couple of questions. Andy, for some reason, I cannot pull up chat box today for the first time ever, so I'm going to let you handle all the questions.
I'm more than happy to read all that question for you, Ken, and for Paul, of course. So question from Jessica Rose. How do you stand up when you have those ideas without being labeled a problem or going against the grain?
That's a good, so here's what we're really good at as human beings. We're really good at gaslighting, creating barriers, being complete assholes, and shutting down conversations. So, but here's what we're also really good is we're good at getting what we want by reading a room, being empathetic, understanding that everyone's trying, hopefully, to get to the same place, which is fantastic ratings and revenue. And so, a lot of it's the tonality in your approach, right? There's a big difference between approaching a conversation like, look, you guys are wrong. You don't know what the hell you're doing. You're messing up my show. To, hey, I have some ideas. I love what you said the other day about the bit that we did. And I know you had some constructive criticism about that bit. I've actually thought about that. I'd like to completely re-engineer what we're doing and how we're engaging with the audience. And I'd love your trust to experiment on some new things. And we'll do it in the hour that is maybe the least listened to hour, so that you're not worried about having a disruptive impact that nobody wants. So I think a lot of it is doing what you already know how to do, which is get what you want. One thing we learn as human beings is we are all manipulators. And I don't mean manipulation in a bad way. It means that we read situations and we're like, okay, how am I going to get what I want? And part of how you get what you want is to bring ownership in your ideas and give some of that ownership to other people. And so be collaborative in the way that you do it. The other thing you should think about, and I know that Randy Lane, who's on here, would support, is that funnel it through stories. Funnel it through why it matters what you're talking about, you want to get accomplished, and relate it to a story about yourself or an interaction with a co-host or a coworker or a sales manager or a member of your audience. And if you do that, you will bring people into ownership of your idea so that they can co-own and collaborate with you. A good way of thinking about it is co-evolution. Co-evolve. Like if you bring people into your sphere and you bring them into your ideas and you operate in the creative play field with people as partners rather than you're talking at people, you're talking with people, then you will get a lot of what you want. You may not get everything, but you will get a lot of what you want.
Yeah, people usually want everything. That makes it complicated. So, question from and I hope I pronounced that right, Mikhailo Bespalko. Mikhailo writes us from Ukraine. For 3 months, I'm PD of a military radio network in Ukraine. We target a civil audience. What would be your single advice for me as PD if you could share it?
Well, first of all, I think that my heart goes out to the people of Ukraine who have been whose lives have been just disrupted in ways that none of us really can imagine. And it's heartbreaking, and it's also incredibly inspiring how resolute the Ukrainian people are. So my advice really ties into what I just said. Is there's a resoluteness to what the Ukrainian people are going through right now against an invasion. And so I think you need to lean into that humanity, even if what you're providing is just pure escape. And so think about creative ways you can really share the triumph of individual stories of human beings who are surviving every day and thriving despite a crazy circumstance. What are kids doing to exist right now and thrive and continue to learn? What are families doing to stay together? What are people doing to help each other out? I mean, those are all great stories you can tell in an entertaining fashion that brings levity, a little light to what otherwise is a lot of stress, right? There's a lot of PTSD. I mean, the whole country of Ukraine has PTSD right now. Whenever you hear a noise, you don't hear it the same way. So bring some levity and light to it by telling the stories of triumph in a way that really brings cohesion to our common human experience. That's what I would say.
Beautiful. And I think the last one we take is a question from Paul Coffey. Are you picking additional ponies, or is this your stable stuff?
What's the question?
Are you picking additional ponies, or is your stable full?
Who's that?
So I think Paul is trying to get an agent here.
Who's that question from?
Paul Coffey.
I love Paul Coffey. Paul is a tremendous human being, and I was incredibly great friends with his wife who passed away. So I'm not taking new clients, but here's the beauty of Workhouse Media is that we just hired Keith Kaufman last year, who runs our Nashville office. Keith ran all the deals for iHeart for 14 years. And unbelievable. I did hundreds of millions of dollars in deals with Keith. I finally got him to come over to the light on the talent side. And John McConnell. John McConnell runs our New York office. John is amazing. And we're about to make another announcement of someone else joining Workhouse Media. And there should be an announcement in the next few weeks about another person coming into the fold. And so, but Paul Coffey can call me anytime because I've known Paul for a couple of decades. I love Paul.
Beautiful. So, and of course, I think a lot of people can call Paul anytime. Paul, it was such a pleasure having you. I mean, I swear to God, I learned so much. And
somebody got that.
It's incredible. Like I bet you could go on and go on like with a million other stories, and I think we should definitely try to do a round two, like with some more deal stories, like the crazy things you experienced as an agent, like doing basically an entertainment version of this. So that would be personally, I'd be like highly interested in that, and that would be really fantastic. So thank you for making the time.
I'll bring the harmonica I don't know how to play, my guitar that I don't know how to play, and I'll sing a song using my voice that does not know how to sing. So I'll be happy to be the entertainment, and you'll see every member of the webinar escape to TikTok immediately to actual entertaining.
So well, Paul, thank you for today. Thank you for sharing so much, and congrats on your success. It's really good to know that you and your company are champions of radio talent and doing what you can to help radio talent. And as you said throughout the webinar today, how important, and that's the difference maker and the distinct thing that we have in offer. And I love that. So thank you.
I leave with one thing. At a time when people are feeling a little stressed out and thinking that radio's best days are behind, that is not true. The best days of radio are actually ahead if you're a great talent and you can connect with an audience. But radio has to reinvent itself consistent with the way that people love to consume content. And hopefully the programming executives who I know want the same things, success, hopefully they're thinking of ways to reinvent the way that content is presented, because the way that traditionally content is presented on the radio 15 years ago does not work in 2024. And so let's lean into our superpower, actual humans talking to actual humans. Thank you again, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you so
also
much.
Want to thank Robbie, our producer, for helping make this happen each and every month. We are back next month. Watch your inboxes and our social channels for the next guest. It's going to be great. We got a lot of great ones in the pipeline for the year. And also, too, if you missed any part of today, you want to share it, you want to watch it again, the video will be available tomorrow on the following websites: P1, Benztown, YouTube, and social channels. And you can watch any of the series at any time on demand at the p1mediagroup.com website. So thanks, everybody. Thanks again, Paul. Thank you, Andy. We'll see you guys in about a month's time.
Thanks, guys. It was a pleasure. Have a good night. Cheers.